Alrighty, everyone. Thank you again for tuning into the UNSC Community Server Discord podcast. I hope y'all have been having a good day today. We do have this is going to be one of our special episodes. So basically, right now, and Coden can always jump in here too. The setup we have going is we're probably going to do weekly like multi-topic episodes on Wednesday. And so those we'll choose from 3 to 4. Of course, we'll always have our guest speaker on. And so that's going to be like our every week we're at least doing one on Wednesday. And then we're also going to have one on normally Sundays, any other day, basically. It depends on our schedule whenever we can. And we're going to try and do it a weekly thing where it's basically just either a debate or a discussion about one specific topic that we think is big enough to talk about for, 45 minutes to an hour. Coden, did I miss anything with that? I think right now we're still in the schedules of planning on this Wednesday's one, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's still in the works, but it is going to be a pretty good one.
Yeah, and I will say we don't have like time exclusive spots yet. We just know that it's going to be Wednesday. The times will probably always be from around 6 to 8 Eastern, one of the two. And we'll let y'all know day of or day before once we get that scheduled out. Anyway, like I said, we do have a huge, or not huge, but we do have a big discussion for y'all today. We're going to be talking about basically kind of the history of clan politics and those ideologies behind them, starting all the way back from not all the way back, but back when Halo 5 was just kind of starting up, and between the establishment ideology and the foundation ideologies, and between the clans that existed, we're going to give a brief history. And that's also oh, well, hold on. I forgot to introduce ourselves. Once again, it's going to be me and Coden, as always, being your main host. But yeah, so we're going to be discussing those two. We're going to give you history about those two things, and then we're going to go into basically some brief discussions about how those have transitioned into kind of I don't want to say political landscape, but ideologies we see clans following today. Coden, you have anything extra before we introduce our guest speaker?
Nothing much other than for those of you who don't know about clan politics or not really familiar with it, this is a good time to start picking it up and learn a few things. So if you're interested in all of that, this is the opportune time.
Yeah, and I will say, as always, I'm going to give the little disclaimer. The people here, of course, we have our own biases against this, and this is something that biases can easily come out of. I feel that me and Coden especially have done our best to take an objective viewpoint about it. I know when I wrote my notes out for this podcast that I did the best I can. We're not going to try and talk about which one's better or worse. We're not going to do that. That's for people up to decide. Just kind of say, what defines each one and kind of examples of that. But without further ado, I do want to go into introducing our speaker. He was very requested on the last podcast. It's going to be Nade from the UNSC Community Server. He's a senior admin currently. His more recent positions, as y'all know him from, was he was the Marine Commanding Officer in Naval Command for a little bit of time in NavCom, as well as he was Marine Commanding Officer in Orion Initiative, as well as the Spartan Commander of Marathon Company in OI. As well as he did serve time as Marine XO, I believe. He can always come in and correct me on this, in NavCom. So, Nate, do you want to introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about yourself? And why we brought you on as well? Oh, I just forgot. I didn't actually give him the permission, so I have to unmute him.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
He's a senior admin. He can actually do it. All right, yeah, you're good.
Everyone good? All right, yeah. So, like you said, I spent a little bit of time in NavCom. A little bit of time. It was actually 2 years. Marine XO, and then I became. I left NavCom to join Orion Initiative. That was kind of the last clan I was in. But I've been doing clans for a while, and I'm actually excited to talk about this today because I've not going to say that I played like a main part in this whole like establishment foundation conflict or discussion, but I was definitely a key figure. But hopefully I can disillusion some things and actually educate some people about what this is all about.
Yeah, and I will once again say that people that know Nade know that he can be a very biased source. And once again, I did we talked beforehand that we're going to try to make this as objective as possible. We're not going to say, we're not. I mean, you could probably tell which way we lean just because of where we kind of base ourselves. But we're not here to try and say, oh yeah, this side's better than this side, or
I'm not here.
Yeah, we're here to explain to y'all what it is. So if you hear references to it later on in the podcast and later episodes, y'all have a basic understanding. Also want to announce that we did figure out the way to record it, so we will be recording this podcast and posting it later on in the media channels. We may as well post it in some other community servers as well. We'll see.
Awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, so basically, let's go straight into it. I don't want to say the start of clan politics, because it definitely wasn't, but kind of where you started to see true names for ideologies forms was with the establishment versus the foundations. And it's important to say that Nate as well is going to bring this up, that the establishment and the foundation, those didn't really become two bodies. They weren't actual political parties. The foundation kind of turned into one, but the establishment never had an actual body in itself. It was just kind of the ideology.
Let's talk about what they are. So what people may or may not be part of this server, it was one of when Discord started to become more into fruition using for clan communication. It used to be Kick before that, and Kick was a terrible platform. So I actually remember it was Cole Basinger, who's a current Spartan 4 commander in NavCom, I believe, right now. And it was a couple other people. We were thinking about making a Discord server, for clans in general, being a central hub for communication. And this later became to be the Halo Clan Community Discord server. It's one of the, if I'm not mistaken, one of the largest clan Discord servers right now. And it became a central hub for a lot of these clans to come and communicate. Now, it was very rough at first. You had all these clans with different ideologies coming in and talking to each other. One of which right now that became a bigger issue. I wouldn't say an issue, but gave birth to the foundation, quote unquote, was Divine Angels. Now, Divine Angels, led by Divine Axios.
You talking? I think we lost him for a second.
He had a very hello.
Okay, you're good now. You're good now.
We're just gonna last you for a little bit.
All right, sorry about that. Which part did I drop off on?
About repeat what you said, the previous 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay.
10 seconds.
So with Divine Angels, when they came into the Halo Clan Community Discord server, they had a very skewed opinion on the Discord staff who was running it at the time, which was, a lot of NavCom personnel, myself included. So it kind of turned into we're just trying to enforce server policy, but they're viewing it as a bias. So this little pettiness kind of grudge thing made them want to make their own server, and that pretty much gave birth to the actual foundation.
Yes. And with that, and it's kind of important to say, is once again, it was we're gonna go into a second about the specific ideologies that kind of separated the two, but the establishment, because you were a figure at this point in NavCom, I believe, y'all did not actually have an establishment server at all. It was just the THCC. That's kind of where y'all talk.
Correct. It was a label. The establishment was a label given by Divine Axios personally. He wanted it to be a sort of anti-social stigma, don't listen to these guys. These are members of the establishment, quote unquote. And there was no actual body or party called the establishment. He believed it was a group of clans that were comprised of NavCom, Infinity, Forgotten Soldiers, I believe, and Exodus. Those were the 4 big clans that had many influence in the clan community at that time. So if you were in that clan, you were considered establishment.
Okay. And one thing I'm gonna let Coden speak in a second, because I get the feeling he's ready to talk. But the one thing that I noticed, especially because at this point I was not in NavCom, I was external. I think small clan at the time. I was probably in Blackwater and in the NCA at those 2 times. And kind of the way that I saw the establishment as, and you can confirm or deny this as well as Coden can give his input, is I kind of saw y'all based yourselves more around external activity. Y'all were always going out trying to find more external activity than internal, whether that would be engagements with 4v4s and raids or anything else like that, and y'all are going at each other like that, as well as creating rivalries and more basing yourselves on conflicts with other clans at that point. And y'all definitely were less professional, and less professional in the role play aspect of it, and more outspoken with opinions when brought up in community servers. Of course, Divine Axios, right, as well as and the Foundation were very outspoken in their opinions of y'all as well. But you didn't see them really. If they had opinions about specific clans other than y'all, they didn't really come out and say that. Whereas the Foundation, it was almost not polar opposite, but they were extreme professionalism, extreme role play, way more larger amount of clan politics and internal activities as well. They were more based around peace between external clans, whereas y'all were kind of more like, let's compete with each other, let's play each other. Would you agree with that?
I would, except for like a few key things, mainly being that like they actually consider the foundation to be like its own body, and like they actually consider the establishment to be like its opposing body. But the thing that puzzled me is they never wanted any direct conflict with these quote unquote establishment clans. That's why they wanted to use sanctions, which was their method of dodging or avoiding activity on purpose with these clans. Because we would call them out, like Navcom, we would call out Divine Angels all the time, asked for requests for raids and 4v4s, and they would never deliver. They said we were sanctioned. This segued into, I mean, it's a pretty popularized term now. Like, if you've heard of sanctions, you've pretty much gotten the concept of it, usually from these old foundation clans. I don't like using these terms because they're not official things, but we'll use them for convenience sake. But, yeah.
Okay, and Coden, I interrupted you, buddy. You want to say something?
Oh, it really wasn't really much other than, being with, the Infinity was my interview with all these clan politics and everything else. And I wasn't very familiar with it at the time. Generally, I thought that clan politics were pretty much kind of stupid. They were kind of, what's the word for it? That's trivial, kind of trivial in my point of view. Because why settle things with politics on a game when you could just, shoot people and do all of that? So yes, I would say that I would be more leaning on the establishment side, because mainly that's where I pretty much came from, and where I kind of was familiarized with. So and with these opposing ideas and these political ideologies that are coming in now and coming in full swing, kind of makes me wonder like what will grow from this, like what will branch off, or what will happen with like future Halo games, especially with like Halo 6 with all these new clans coming up and old clans coming back. Will they fit into the system that people are trying to create in this clan community with the establishment versus foundation ideas?
Yeah. I will say as well, like, there was a lot of things that I also agreed with in the foundation, because like I especially during my time, like, I did not like how, it did feel, though, as the bigger clans, which they considered the establishment, were the ones that were primarily promoting this external activity, and I'm a big promoter of external activity. But, like, at the same time, y'all also did have a tendency to, just kind of, like, push down on smaller clans. Rather, y'all play them, and then you didn't offer anything after that. You could have, and whatnot. And that's one thing that I will say that I think the foundation had right, is they did try and boost up kind of smaller growing clans. Maybe not in ways that I agree with them. I think, I still always think that, external activity is a great way to compete. But like example, Divine Angels and Bellicose, before they had their whole argument, they were great allies because Bellicose was coming up and Divine Angels was able to help them practice with one another and kind of teach them that. Nate, do you have any opinions on that?
Can I interject on that?
Yeah, you can. First.
So I would counter that. I would say the exact opposite. I would say they did more to stifle clan interaction and actual development in the community. Like, you brought up Bellicose, and you mentioned that they helped them. They gave them certain maps. I had an alternate account in the Bellicose server at this time, and Divine Angels, what they were doing is they had this kind of like, it was almost like an extortion, coercion kind of thing going on. Like, oh, you can't interact with this kind of clan or else you're going to be cut off. They were essentially making them believe like they were dependent on them. And that's the kind of ideology I think the foundation really supported and wanted to have as a core principle. Because think about it, these are a small group of small clans that didn't really have a lot of influence at the time compared to Navcom, Exodus, FS. So what they wanted to do, they wanted to have a closed off little echo chamber to basically safely spread their own beliefs and ideals. And I don't think that's a good method of development for clans at this point in time, especially on Halo 5, which isn't really a role-play oriented kind of game. It's more focused on competitive kind of combat.
Yeah. Coden, you brought up something good when we were talking earlier. Because this time you were in Infinity, correct?
Yeah.
How did it actually affect y'all? Because I know the big thing that the foundation, at least from my eyes being from the external when this was actually happening, was that it was sanctioning y'all, and that like y'all, all these establishment clans were gonna like get ruined and kind of like fall because they weren't gonna be able to get the activity. Did it affect y'all in a way? Like, did it really hurt y'all in a sense? Did it affect y'all? Did it, what did it do to kind of like to bring the community together or to separate it, etc., like that?
So generally, when I was in the Infinity around this time, which would have been like early late, like 2016, 2017, probably around that time was when I was around there. Um, it didn't really affect activity as much unless it was clans that were more into the Foundation sense, where they were closed-minded and they were closed off. Like we did only one raid with the Divine Angels, and that was only one raid of the entire time that we've been saying, oh, we should do that and that. And after that raid, it left a sour taste in our mouths because after that, it wasn't really much. We didn't hear much from DA after that raid. So with Infinity, I would say it promoted more or less with activity within the established rather than with clans within the Foundation. Because I'm pretty sure DA was like, oh, don't raid Infinity or whatever, all that bullshit. So I wouldn't say it would really hurt activity during this time with the Infinity, especially when you got guys like with the OI that was still in Infinity at the time. We were going into like higher skilled player groups. So
Nate, what about you? Because once again, the one side that we are missing on this is the Foundation side of things. Like, how did you see it affect them? Because in my opinion, this was after all like the DA Navcom wars and all that. And I mean, DA's still up. DA's still a good clan. Good in a sense. I'm not going to go into whether we deem them good or not, but I mean, it's still a good active clan that some people look to as an influential figure, as well as other clans like NRI, which I believe were a part of the Foundation. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong here.
Yes, they were.
But and I mean, all these clans ended up being relatively influential in the community. Of course, maybe not y'all's specific clans, but overall, they had clans that followed them. What would y'all say about like how do you think it affected them that way?
I mean, it affected them they had their own little echo chamber, which they were free to do whatever they want. They were free of harassment from us, quote unquote, establishment types, because all we wanted to do was, just play them. And I guess you could say just assert our influence over them. That's all we want. That's a poor choice of words. We didn't really care about our influence over them. We didn't really care about them as clans in general. We knew they weren't very influential. They weren't very big. They weren't very powerful. We just wanted to beat them. And I'm speaking like from Navcom's point of view at this time, and that's really all we wanted to do. And they couldn't even give us that because they knew what the outcome would be. But like I said, like as far as they go, like how it went for them, I can't really speak for them. I wasn't in their clans at the time. I don't agree with how DA operates on their day-to-day operations on Halo 5. I think you can see from a lot of leaked documents from a lot of ex Divine Angel members and from a lot of old servers that people have viewed that they're kind of unstable right now. I don't know how many members in DA are right now. NRI, they've moved to GTA 5.
And I am going to say that we're not going to like just keep ragging on a clan. Like that's not the goal here. I was just trying to bring it up. Like, at the time when this was more prevalent, they did have influence. I'm not going to let you deny that there. I mean, they did have...
No, I don't believe they did. I don't believe they had any influence. What kind of influence are you saying? Like influence on their members, influence on other clans, or
influence on other clans and influence on their members. I mean, there were plenty of clans that followed them, like that agreed with their sayings, from Clan
like
Orda, NRI, Bellicose, DA. I mean, I could go any of those clans that we kind of deem as isolationists on this point. That's kind of what we saw it as.
You just mentioned all the main Foundation-based kind of clans, though. You're saying they had influence over themselves?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not a Foundation member. I wasn't a part of their servers either. I can't go in and tell you the specific names of clans, but they did have it. Like, I wouldn't say it's an argument. Conan, you can jump in anytime if you think I'm wrong, too.
Mm.
I mean...
Now, when you say influence...
Yeah.
When you say influence, I'm talking about, like, directing almost like a kind of a community policy. Like, I don't know if you remember in, like, the old... THCC, whenever there was arguments, but Exodus was a big clan. Like Navcom and Exodus would usually side or have a certain stance on an argument or a topic, and whatever topic this was, whatever stance Navcom and Exodus had, if they were sharing it, like that kind of became like the de facto like opinion. Anyone who like went against it just became all of a sudden under attack. And that's what I think of more of like influence. Like you can actually direct popular choice, like majority rule, things like that. Like Exodus had a strong media presence, they had a strong military, NAVCOM did, FS not so much. But these are something these foundation clans did not have. And that's what I'm talking about when I hear the word like influence.
I gotcha. All right.
Yeah, and I would pretty much agree with that. With all these close-minded in isolation with the clans in there, I would also say that with clans that kind of sided themselves with DA and NRI and all those clans, so those clans typically, they kind of like shelter themselves away from clans that are like basing their ideology with the establishment. I would agree with that as well. They wouldn't be as active. They wouldn't jump on the boat as quickly as it would to be 4v4 or to do a raid or do anything like that, or even just talk in general, because of their fear of being under attack or anything like that.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I don't want to keep us on this topic too long because once again, this wasn't the full main discussion either. We are going into kind of the discussion of how this is affected, because these are just kind of the base ideologies that I think we can all agree on that were kind of the two main separations in the community, like two sides of it in the political spectrum. But I mean, that's, as a lot of people are saying in DMs and everything, this is way in the past. It's kind of a dead topic now. But these definitely do have kind of evolved into what we're seeing today, and especially in the UNSC community, where we have our server, in my opinion, that is much more, I would say, establishment-based, promotes external activity, engagements with others, the rivalries, conflicts, more outspoken, etc., and less professional. And then you have Kurt's server, which is much more based around roleplay, professionalism, peaceful operations is a big thing I know Kurt loves to do because they do their way more community events than we do. What are y'all opinions on that? And furthermore, outside of the UNSC community too, how have y'all seen kind of the ideologies grow and then maybe split into new factions where there's kind of split ideas and stuff like that? Because I think another group that we had on last podcast with Sentinel is kind of a mix between the two, of where they are they try to be very professional. They do the politics. I mean, we've seen that with their announcements and everything, and they do the role play, but they're also very focused on external activity as well. They're focused on engagements, rivalries, and conflicts. So, I mean, what do y'all think about that? And how?
Yeah, I would certainly say that with the establishment versus foundation and all this that basically planted the seeds in a sense for all of these new groups and all these new ideologies to start popping up, mixes between them, like a 75-25% mix ratio with some of them. There's a lot more that's going to pop up later in the future. Like what we're seeing right now can be like attributed to like, this could be cringe, but real life politics as well, because it's just not just one group that just exists. You can have hundreds of other groups that spans from that one group later on down the road. Because obviously that is just like basically the start of it. So
I think, you're talking about ideology. You're talking about like, clan politics and like all these clans like having their own kind of like methods of doing things and their ideology. You mentioned Kurt's clan and their little, I call them a cult because I've seen what they do. I've been in their parties. I join their games. I do what they do, and it's odd. Okay, I don't care if anyone thinks otherwise or has a problem with that. It's odd. But let me talk about like the meta. Like I guess you could say like you could say that I'm stupid for saying this, but you talk about a role play clan on Halo and the way that they interact with other clans. And you have to view each clan as sort of like its own sovereign nation. It's comprised of its own government, its hierarchy, whatever you want to call it, and it conducts itself in such a way that an actual country or nation or something would. And I think what you have is you have a lot of these inexperienced or kind of like naive people who want to like, a lot of people want to lead their own clan. You look at our server, you look at the THCC. There's tons of small clans. There's tons of big. There's a little bit of big clans, but they don't know how to actually conduct. They don't know how to actually conduct themselves or how to conduct like an actual foreign interaction. And I think that's why you have such a degrading slope in regards of like role play. And that's why I don't really.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Would you say that they don't know how to interact with all clans in general, or just clans that they don't agree with? Because that's one thing
All
that I've
clans-
noticed is like, I mean, I've heard and seen meetings. I mean, they're obviously doing stuff. They have their foreign networks. They have their networks of clans that they interact with, and I would assume they interact pretty well considering the documents they put out and everything. But then of course you have the interactions.
You mean the one with spelling errors and just that makes no sense whatsoever, like those kind of documents?
I mean, I could argue some of those clans, are able to pump stuff out like that do makes in a sense to them, at least in the roleplay aspect. Once again, this is more opinion based on like how much roleplay do you actually want to do. And Nate, I know you're not the maximum roleplay type of guy, but like
I don't have an issue with roleplay. I honestly don't. I think it's fine. It's necessary, definitely for clans. But I think there's a certain limit, and I think if you're going to do it, you should at least do it in a way that's that makes sense and it's effective. Like when I was in Navcom, like things made sense. We did everything for a reason. There was no point in doing things that didn't require like we didn't sit around a table and crouch at a table just to have a fucking meeting. Like there was no need for that. But it was a highly efficiently run clan, and I would argue it is right now, regardless of my opinion or whatever.
Okay. Well, I mean, I just see more of those documents that you see clans posting out today, and like they're interacting with one another, and that's one thing that I think they do really well. And once again, you can of course argue about it and disagree. We're not going to get into that, but you do see them post a lot of the role play foreign affairs stuff, whether you think they're doing it right or not. You do see them post a lot of that, but then you also see them when they try and interact with Navcom, or you see them try and interact with any clan that really is not their cup of tea, is not like similar to them in any real regard. I do agree with you that they don't interact with them very well, if at all, because they go based on their facts and refuse to kind of compromise, see the other side of things. And I do think this is kind of prevalent in what we're seeing now, especially in like clans splitting up, because I mean, DA did it recently with Navcom. And I was the member of Navcom they did it with, where they just didn't interact at all. They just started copying pasting. I think DL did the same thing. And though DL did have some discussion with me before that. So I would say they did better. But then you also see clans like HighCom and whatnot, where they just completely isolate themselves from having people in servers. MF, actually not HighCom, MF would be better. Back when MF was alive, everyone in our community server, at least, didn't really like them because they didn't interact. When they did interact, it was completely kind of like...
They boasted about themselves.
They boasted about themselves, but then wouldn't follow up with anything because they didn't respect the clans. They didn't agree with the clans that were in there.
They had a superiority complex, much like Divine Angels.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also there's also the same thing we're seeing, and I'm not trying to like call these clans out. Because there's definitely issues with Navcom that I'm going to go into in a second, but or clans that are like Navcom, like the establishment clans that would be deemed. But I mean, they do in a sense isolate themselves by preventing. One thing that we really promote in our server, and Nade can agree with this as staff members because he's been in our staff chats, is we really try to include as many people into the server as we can that involves the UNSC. There was a discussion about Gen Com. They had multiple, like 3/4 of their clan was UNSC, but it wasn't completely. We let them in. Minister Federation. People argued that they weren't UNSC. We let them in because of the lore-based argument that they were able to make. We try to do that as much as we can. And there's other clans like this that, I mean, I'm not going to go into the history of it, but I know now Kurt kicked MF out way before we did, because when they were actually still active too, I believe. Could be wrong about that.
He did that just because he didn't like them.
Yeah, but I mean, he was able to make up the argument for it because they weren't 100% UNSC. They were, as they would say, at a UEG colony clan. When you're going for people that aren't 100% yours and you're kicking them out of community servers or what are supposed to be community servers because of that, like I think that's considered in a sense isolating. And I know HighCom's done that with NC. They're recently starting to change it. I've been talking with Kurt more recently. And he is starting to let NC members in there. He let me, he let Shane. He's letting other NC people that he considers professional into there.
No one ever lets me in anything.
Yeah, well, there's probably a reason. But anyway, but I mean, on the opposite side, I can think of many problems with that are rightfully so that they have to complain about establishment clans like Navcom of us being considered trolls. I mean, if you look at it from their higher roleplay aspect of the wanting to be able to go into UNSC socials and feel like we're a faction community, not just like a community of clans, but like we are based around our faction, we are friends because of that faction, and Navcom doesn't do that. I mean, I don't do that. I've gone into UNSC socials, I've shot them up before. I've also gone into UNSC socials and teamed up with UNSC and shot innies before, whatever you want to call it. And I mean, as well as the amount of trash talk. Now, Navcom, I will say recently, just because I have to defend myself in this sense, we don't send to trash talk unless we're trash talked first now, but of course, or people dodge us or something in that sense, and of course people will always argue this and will always try to debate me about this because they just don't like Navcom. But I mean, I will say we have tried to before, but I know in the past that these clans like clans like Navcom and like the establishment clans have had issues with being way, I don't know, just like PR problems, basically. Like if their clan was based around any sort of professionalism or roleplay, they wouldn't be very good. Would y'all agree with that? Because I mean, OI is a perfect example. Well, I mean, lots of people didn't like OI not just because y'all attacked us or you attacked people and went out, but like the response they got after engaging y'all, after they got beat, or after, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. What are y'all opinions on that? Coden, you haven't talked in a while.
I feel like it's pretty much because with roleplay there's like there's a couple of tiers there that I believe there's very serious role players, there's semi-serious, and there's not so serious. I feel like with these political stuff with Kurt's Highcom and all that other and all the other UNSC clans, they kind of put themselves in these serious tiers where they're very serious about these roleplay. Like they will pretend that they actually are a Marine in 2558 fighting against Promethean little bastards, that are crawling around the wall. And you got some other guys. Like I would say that Orion Initiative at certain times, not all the time, at certain times, and even Infinity as well, we were semi-serious to not so serious. Like we didn't believe that we were what we were in actual real life, and we didn't believe all of that happening. But there were some times that it would get kind of serious with some role play, like talking about merging, talking about doing.
I mean, you look at the documents, you can see that role play aspect too. We all have our own formats for transfer forms, for AARs, for anything like that. So I mean, there is role play, but like it's not to the extent. Navcom doesn't.
Your mic just cut out.
I think I know what he's trying to say.
There's certain areas where there are role play. Like for instance, with Navcom, like you guys don't role play in the custom lobby. You're like, oh, alpha formation on me. Let's walk into this building. Let's secure a perimeter, right? You're just like, oh, we're just gonna go fucking take this base and we're gonna write an AAR document about it. There's certain role play in certain areas, not the entirety of everything. That's where the semi-serious versus serious guys come in. That I would argue. Where serious guys, they would literally like alpha formation on me. We need to drive at like 50 miles per hour on coastline to go up to this base at Hamburger Hill or something like that. We're using reach terminology here because I don't give a shit about Hill 5 personally.
Yeah.
And they would just set up a perimeter and they would just be so roleplay about it. And then whenever they get attacked by UNSC, either they do like one of like two things. They either, they'd be like, oh, you're an insurrectionist, and they fight back, or oh, you're an insurrectionist, and they start complaining about it. That's typically what I saw.
Yeah, and I mean, once again, when you see that, it goes back into, and I'm not saying, oh, those clans that do that are foundation clans. There's no foundation clans I would consider. I mean, there's still things based around that ideology, but their ideology for their clan, whether they like it or don't like it, it works or it doesn't work, it is based more closely to them. It's more of a role play environment. It's more of a professional, hardcore role play environment. And so, I mean, you're seeing that even today. Like, even in the UNSC Community Server, where we have clans of all different types, because I know for a fact we have those type of roleplay clans, because they come into our server and talk about it. And I have to mute people that try and trash talk them too much because of it. So it does go both ways, and we are still seeing that stuff today. Nate, you said you had something
regarding that, regarding like Uber roleplay kids in the UNSC server, like Spartan ID numbers and shit like that.
Oh God.
Yeah, whatever you want to. I mean, anything on the topic.
I mean, I've made my stance on this pretty clear. I don't think it works. I don't think it's good for the community as a whole in the direction that people want it to be. Like, because everyone talks about, like, I always hear them say, like, oh, like, this is nothing like the community back in the day. Like, first of all, when I hear people say that, I just want to tell them to shut up immediately, because, like, the odds of them actually being, in clans, like, back in, like, when I hear back in the day, like 2011, 2012, like, is astronomically low. But you never know. But what people don't understand is back then, like, there was a much more, like, meta-centric fucking attitude towards roleplay. Like, you actually had, like, a lot of these clans, like, come to these games and, like, have a lot of meetings. Like, you see this on Halo 5 too, but it's not as much. It's not as prevalent. Like, big clans like today, like Navcom sure as hell doesn't do that, because they've outgrown it. But like on Reach, like, it was super serious, but it was fun because it was conducted in such a way that it was I don't know, it's hard to explain. Like, people just kind of knew what they were doing, and, like, now nobody knows what they're doing. It's weird.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with that type of role play. Like, I don't have a problem with anything really, as long as it isn't annoying, and as long as they're not, they know exactly what they're doing, and instead of they're just like, oh, we're just going off of a whim, and we think that this is how it's done, when it's
like, here's a good
done a
example.
way.
Here's a good example. Who here remembers it was in the aftermath of, like, the DA and Navcom war. Like, DA invited Navcom to their map to have, like, what was it, like a peace treaty or like a meeting or something. And
Oh yeah.
I remember being in the Navcom server when this was happening. Like, they were all talking, like, all right, be ready. Like, you looking at this guy? Like, they were ready to shoot up and murder, like, all of them.
That was the Red Wedding, right? I mean, that
was the Red Wedding. You can link the video somewhere in the chat, and it was amazing. Yeah. And I think, like, that's the kind of thing, like, that's missing. Like, nothing's fun anymore. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
And I will say that is where our bias comes into. We find the conflict more fun. We find the establishment more fun, which is why you don't take this as, like, oh, you have to agree with us on this, because we do have very extreme viewpoints, and people have other viewpoints about those and like other things. Some people like those role plays, playing more of a political game and the security-esque of it, like, that we just don't do anymore.
Well, it's important, though. You can't just discard it, because it is important. Because look at Colonial Federation. Like, this was a clan that had a lot of members. It had, like, around 120 members. It conducted activity every day, but it ended because there was two people. Yeah, there was two people in their Discord server, in their government chat, like, leaking and directing policy. Like, politics can be a powerful weapon if you know how to use it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm trying to put this in a way. I'm trying to think about how to word this right. Like, I feel like honestly, the thing that really solves the problem, and everyone likes to talk about how, like, as you said, the community was so much better back then. I think the solution is somewhere in the middle. Like, I do think you have to have a certain extent of politics in, and of course, I'm in a clan that completely doesn't do that. So it's funny that I say this, but, like, I do believe the solution is somewhere in the middle. You do have to have some sense of clan politics. That's how you get things done. That's how you get conflicts started. But I also think you also have to realize it's Halo. It's a shooter. It's meant for fights. The game is meant for conflict. It's not meant to be like real world. There's times to make diplomacy friendlies, and then there's time to make enemies. And when you make those enemies, don't just sanction them, play them. And of course, this is my opinion. Some people just don't want to, and by all means, don't do it. You're not forced to it all. You're not required to it all. But I do feel if people really were wanting this, the community to come back, we have to do some politics. That's always going to be a thing, I think, because I mean, it is a role play community. It is a military role play community, but you also got to understand, if militaries are meant to fight, that's why we have them. They're meant for security and meant to fight in the real world, and we got to fight too. So I don't know if y'all have opinions on that, but I mean, that's what I think. It's somewhere in the middle that people are just kind of like not wanting to come to the middle of,
Well, I agree, but you have to look at the other side. We can look at the people who take it way too seriously, and look at who just, like, kind of. And I think, and I'm gonna go on a limb, and I'm gonna say it's bad. Like, it's bad for your clan's health. Like, can you name me one successful, influential clan as of right now that has, like, a very, like, 100% role play and professional aspect to it? Because I can't.
100% role play and professional aspect. I mean, no, because, like, those clans that do try and get that I don't know enough about. I'm not in. Wouldn't be able to tell you.
I mean, like I can bring references to people who have like this kind of like roleplay attitude. Like DA is one of them, Orta was one of them, MF was one of them, and like these are not what I would call healthy clans because they've cut themselves off. They're too indulged in what they want to do, which is be by themselves and roleplay. So yeah.
One thing I will say is someone sent me a DM and asked me this, and I'm gonna answer it. And he asked, "Can it be said that role-playing clans from Halo Reach and whatnot that are a big reason that these factions like we have today, such as UNSC faction, Sangheili, Forerunner, Flood, Military, and many others, I find it that many people mock it and make fun of it, but still represent themselves as those things. I don't think it's really that people mock it because." I think I think the role playing is not what created those factions. I think those factions were inherently going to come in because people want to be able to identify themselves as something. Whether you're a military clan, whether you're UNSC, whether you're a Warhammer 40K clan, whether you're an elite clan, any of those, I think those were inherently going to come. I would say the factions that we have, like you say, we have today, are more from the role playing of the sense of the people that don't want to role play that hard. And the people that want to roleplay extremely and try and exclude the people that don't want to roleplay that hard. And I say, so I wouldn't say it's really as people mock each individual one. It's just that they mock that. I'm sorry to go off a tangent here, but if y'all had opinions on anything I just said or want me to clarify something, feel free to say it as well.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, you're fine.
But yeah, so basically, I'm trying to think of one other thing that like kind of another idea. I mean, I don't know as much as I will say about Sentinel because we're probably going to have them as a topic for the next week's discussion as well because they're just kind of prevalent right now.
Oh, they're not. I
mean, they're making stuff and making plans like stuff. Whatever. We can argue about that later. But all right, okay. That's a different discussion.
Yeah.
I will say that, do you guys agree that what they're doing in a sense would somewhat help because, one, they are bringing the activity back or trying to bring the activity back, whether you agree with how they're doing it or not. They're trying to bring the activity between bringing up sides and actually, fighting those sides, as well as they're also making friends. Do you agree that is in a way a good thing, or do you...
No, it's incredibly a good thing, and I totally support it. You know why I'm skeptical about it, and I think that's not going to happen in the slightest? Because from history, like this isn't my bias. This is as history has shown us. Z4, aka Saberfear, Z4 Bros, whatever you want to call him, he's had a massive history of being incompetent when it comes to leading and effectively managing a clan. Like he's made these bold and brash statements about this recent one is like this anti-UNSC sentiment. Like this is clearly a cry for attention. It's I predicted what it was going to turn out to be like in the THCC. I'll find a screenshot of it, but it's not going to be anything more than just like an activity kind of like excuse. Like he's going to go out and find all these weak little UNSC clans, and he's going to beat them, and he's going to say, "Oh, look at how powerful Sentinel is," and then everyone's going to be like, "Oh my, Sentinel's such a really good clan," and then he's going to fight clans like you, like NavCon, and you're going to put him out to pasture, like you already did. You already beat him in a raid, correct?
Yes, we did beat them in a raid.
So exactly, like
people would argue it, but we have beaten them in other raids as well. So yeah.
So I don't get me wrong, I like what they're saying, I support it, but it's not a good Sentinel is not a good vehicle for those points to actually be in, and they're not going to deliver. So yes.
Yeah. Okay, and this is once again kind of going off topic because now we're not really discussing the ideologies behind it, but what we think would kind of be the best mixture of these ideologies. What do you think would be the best mixture of these ideologies? Where do you think the line needs to be made in the middle that people try and walk across? Because once again, the whole point of these ideologies is that they're kind of almost two separate sides of the spectrum, at least the way we see it right now. And people argue about it a ton. I mean, that's evident from just kind of the interactions that the two sides have with each other. Where do you think the middle ground is that people need to follow, and whether they choose to or not? I mean, it's once again, no one's being forced to, but where do you think the middle ground is?
You're asking me or
anyone? Feel free to talk.
In all honesty, I feel like that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to try to find a healthy balance, and I don't think we're going to find it anytime soon. Like a healthy balance of the role play and the other stuff and all of these different things that they want to believe in with all of that. And fair enough if they find one and they can work with it, but if nobody else really agrees with it, who's going to really pick that up, and how is that going to start momentuming down to spread out throughout other community? Because everyone's going to think that, we have the perfect ratio. Like, for instance, we're like, we're 80% that and 20% this. We're like 75, 10, 10, and whatever percentage is rest for 100.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a mix and matching, and there's even going to be like people that'll try to take those ideas that a clan has already done, because they're like, oh, you guys are doing this wrong. You should not be like an 80-20. You should be at an 80-10-10 or something like that.
Yeah. Now, I do want to ask y'all something, and I'm sorry, unless Nate, did I interrupt you?
I was going to say something real quick. I was going to say, like, that's something that's not going to happen naturally. Like, people aren't just going to wake up one day and be like, we're going to come to this middle ground that hasn't been discussed. It's going to take an actual plan that has influence and power in the community to actually not mandate that, but kind of coerce. I can't find the right word. Ease other clans into it, and I think honestly that clan, as of right now, is NavCon, regardless of how much they want to get into the actual political climate of the community. But that's not going to be something that happens naturally. Okay. But yeah, we can move on to the next topic.
Oh, okay, it's not really another topic. It's just something I also thought about. And once again, I was not nearly as widespread in the community. I knew a lot of clans. Like, I knew Z4 on Halo Reach. I knew a lot of clans on Halo Reach, but I never got like into any community chats back in the day when I think it was Kick and whatnot. I was never a part of any of those, so I was not like well known. And so I actually am really curious. Do you think that the transition into Discord, where these ideas have become way more countering of each other, way more against each other, and people from both sides have just gotten together in mass amounts, do you think that has affected it at all? Do you think that has affected in a good way, a bad way? How do you think Discord has been able to affect kind of the ideology spectrum and where we're seeing it now? Do you think it separated it more? Yeah, I know. I actually am really curious because I wasn't a part of it. I'm assuming y'all were in those bigger clans like NavCom at the time.
I actually really like this question, and you're gonna be surprised by my answer. And I'm going to say no. I think Discord has been, and this is coming from me, someone who like co-founded the Halo Clan Community Server, which I'm no longer moderating. I think Discord has been one of the most detrimental things to clans, the way they interact, and it's for these reasons. Think of it this way: as soon as a clan is done with a raid or before or something, and these two clans are in the same server together, everyone in that server instantly knows like who wins, who lost, whatever. So there's a tally going now. So now you have like, all right, well, this clan's better because they beat them this time, and it just spirals into a thing. And then also you have all these members who have been in past clans together, who are now in other clans. It kind of gives rise to I'll give myself an example, like poaching. Like when I was in OI, like half the people in all the community servers I was always in were in NavCom at one point. So I knew all these people, and I would slide in their DMs real stealth-like, and I'd be like, hey, just having a casual conversation, and I would actually get them to join OI. Like, you can argue the ethics of that anyway, but I did it, and it was accessible. This was never a thing before Discord. Like Kick was a horrible platform, don't get me wrong, because you could only have 50 people per server or something, but I feel like Discord does have its uses, but in regards to how they interact, I think it's done more harm than good.
Coden, you have an opinion?
I would say that for me personally, because I wasn't that much involved with Kick and community and all these clan ideologies, because I was a little military clan kid on Reach for some time, and I wasn't really involved with clan politics, but I'm pretty sure with Discord, with moving people from Kick to Discord, I wouldn't say, like I said, I wasn't around, so I don't know what the specific answer was, but I'd say there's a little bit of both. I could say it's really good or it's a really bad thing, mainly because of with the amount of people that were boosted up and numbers that people could communicate with each other, and all of these huge servers that can have over, like, I think the THTC is 1,800 people now.
2,000.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
2,000?
Yeah, 2,000 people in one server. You couldn't even do that in Kick. I think that's a little bit of a feat in of itself, right? And bring it with all these people. Like, yeah, I do agree with Nate on this. Like, when you're doing in raids, it could also hurt you. Like, people already know who's losing, and instantly go into shit talking.
Your reputation is now affected in front of 2,000 people. Like, this was unheard of, like, back in the day. Like, someone would upload a video, and, like, maybe, like, 500 people would watch that video, and, like, that would be it. But,
yeah, and I mean, I definitely agree with that, and I was actually curious to see if y'all would have that, because that's almost the same opinion I have. I think back to the Reach days, and once again, I mean, I knew a lot of clans, but just because we lost one raid does not mean everyone knew about it. And that's why I do kind of see the side that, at the beginning of the time, the Foundation, and now clans that kind of like don't post all their stuff, don't have their members join the server. I understand where it is, because it really can, one battle can really kind of screw up your reputation, especially as a newer clan. One battle, one engagement, one interaction with a clan, whether it's a meeting or anything else, can really screw up your clan's persona in the community. And so, I mean, I definitely think it's been detrimental to a sense. Don't get me wrong, I love Discord. Never want to go back to Kick. I think internally it's the best thing ever to happen to Halo clans.
Yes.
But, yeah, I definitely think that community servers in general, which is ironic because we're here.
And you also have to take into consideration. I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, you're perfectly fine.
Yeah, you also have to take into consideration. I like to call it the mob effect, like the mob rules. Like, you've seen it in this server, THCC. Whenever there's a big discussion going on, especially between two big clans, like I was talking about earlier, whenever Navcom and Exodus had a topic, like they dictated the norm. You know what I mean? Like. They kind of just, whatever they said was kind of like law, and like most people, like majority rules, like accepted that. They were just like, yeah, I'm on Navcom and Exodus side. Like, they didn't want to be against Navcom and Exodus, because they're like, oh, well, if I disagree with these two guys, they're gonna come after me. It's like, there's kind of like there's a power kind of thing for the majority, which I like, because you could dictate community policy that way. And I think if people knew what they were doing, they could do it much more effective and actually do good things to the community. But they don't, because they're stupid. So,
yeah. Alrighty. Well, is there anything else you all want to discuss? I mean, I feel like we've really kind of delved into the topic. We've talked about kind of how it's affected. We talked about the history of it, kind of the two things that really split the community, in our opinion, or at least in my opinion. We've also talked about kind of the ideas of how it's continued on and evolved into today. Talked about what we think the reasons are of this, but do y'all have anything else y'all want to like kind of bring up or discuss about this topic before we head out?
The future, I feel like the future of clan politics, since it's relatively, I would say that right now, as of like right now, it's pretty early late stage, like the late of the early stage of clan politics. So it's still rising up, and I feel like when Halo 6 comes around, when more clans start popping, because obviously Halo 5 is kind of like deteriorating a little bit. When Halo 6 comes up, and if Halo 6 is good, if everyone's predictions are fine, like I wouldn't put too much hope into Halo 6, or even MCC for that matter, because MCC is also getting fixed, that more and more fixes and all of this stuff will come in to the political system that we have, and it's growing. And so it's going to grow, but I don't think it's going to be it'll be fixed anytime.
For the future, I think don't depend and don't hope that the next game will be better, because more than likely it's not going to be. If you really want to see an improvement, you need to start getting a little bit more knowledgeable about how clans interact with clans. You need to understand the history of clan roleplay and meta. I know this sounds like absurd, but it's true. You need to understand like what old prominent clans like the United Nations and the UCL, like all these old clans, like what they did, so you can learn from their mistakes, learn what they did right. That's how Navcom's been alive for like 5 years now. Like they've seen all these clans, they know what works, they know what doesn't. I argue that, granted, it's time on Halo 5, it's seen some pitfalls due to certain people in leadership positions, but that's not the point. The point is it's still up and it's still running, and not a lot of clans can say that nowadays, because they run into a few problems and they don't know how to deal with it, and they just shut down, or they they merge into another clan, and it's such a shame because you have so much wasted potential. So if you really want to see an improvement, like I would say, like I'd be more than willing to assist like clans like in the political aspect because I have a wealth of knowledge regarding it, and I know a lot of people do not. So I don't know. Yeah.
And I'm gonna say this, unless Coden, I'm gonna kind of start the conclusion of it. And if I'm giving any tips to anyone, which once again we're kind of straying from what this originally was supposed to be, but whatever. This is what a podcast is meant to be. It's our opinions of what we want to talk about. Don't be willing to interact with the others. Like if DA came to the table right now and said, "We want a discussion with you. We want it to be professional. We understand you're not going to be as professional as we want you to be, but we will." We are willing to come to the table and compromise about it and work toward that and actually, begin to not just sanction each other again. I'm 100% willing to. But you don't expect a clan 100% to pander to your ideals. Because I feel like that's what we're in right now of just do it our way or don't interact with us at all. Or,
right.
That I feel is what's going to kill the community. I feel like that's what's going to continue to hurt us. So yeah, I mean that's my tip of the day. Just be understanding that it's clans. We all do it because we want to have fun. People have different reasons of having fun. Don't completely exclude people because they don't 100% agree with how you want to have fun. You can still do things that agree with your clan and interact with them. There's plenty of ways to do it. But yeah, that's about all I got. Last opportunity before I close out the podcast, anyone?
Well, I'm pretty good. Other than just don't be afraid to step into the darkness, really, because with if you can translate this into real life as well. Like if somebody says something that you don't agree with, don't just automatically shut them out. Be willing to hear that, because obviously you're going to run into it later on in life, or a clan career.
Nade, any last remarks?
Just try to make a name for yourself, and by that I mean don't say something outlandish and become a community-wide meme like so many people have already. But like look at all these people like in the past that like if I'm about to say some names and you should recognize some of them. General JB, like that's a bad idea. Hang on, that's a bad example. My bad. Rewind. Okay, so
I mean it's bad now, but it wasn't back in the day.
Bad now, but back in the day, like Shadow Sniper 172 back in the day, Vermilion FTW,
Charlo. Someone said Irish Charlo.
He's notable.
He's notable. Not anymore, but I mean, people back on Reach noticed him.
Exactly, but like all these people who've actually like made a mark in the community, good or bad, they made a mark because they knew what they were doing in a way. And why? What?
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm just letting you go.
Yeah, like they knew what they were doing in a way, and obviously people still talk about them to this day, regardless of either if they were a joke or if they were actually like, a prominent figure. And another
DG
person,
Hashtag real throwback.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, people are going to look at you two ways. They're either going to say you were a good leader, a prominent community figure, or they're going to say you were a trash meme. Like some people fall into that category. DGA truth, whatever.
Cool.
But
I mean, and you may have both opinions made on you. Because
exactly.
I will tell you right now, I had people in my DMs, not going to name them, I had people in my DMs bitching about how Nade was not a good enough figure for this topic, did not know what he's talking about, and they're saying, oh, it's all fact-based.
I wish I had any idea what I was talking
about. Yeah, I mean, it's opinion-based. Just because people don't agree with you, if you don't enjoy it, you're welcome to leave. We don't promote it. That's normally what hurts people, but I mean,
these are the people that disagree with me, but these are also the people I could end their clan with like just 5 months on Discord, but it's whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, so unless anyone has anything else to say, for one last time, because I love to give y'all last opportunities, I want to thank everyone again for coming and listening to the UNSC Community Podcast live. Thank you again to Nade for being our guest speaker tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me.
No problem. Once again, our next showing should be Wednesday. Hope to see you all there. I'll actually be in Colorado, so my internet may be dog shit because I'm going to be in the middle of the mountains. But we'll find a way to survive. And I will be posting this at least in our media server because, once again, I have recorded it. Once I get it, made sure it's edited all up and everything to my liking. So yeah, thank you again. Just just heard they're doing an any pod. Okay, why do I not just kick this person? Anyway, yeah. Thank you again for attending, and we hope to see you on Wednesday.
Yeah. And if you got any feedback and suggestions, please let us know. Cut up in the DMs with Hayes and Coden. So yeah.
Yeah, retweet. Send us DMs of any suggestions you have, and anything you want to be discussed, and we may discuss it. Anyway, thank you again, and good night.